Chicago has a lot of different subcultures with people that are completely passionate about what they do. So even when you get into the whole argument of, where house was started, and even when you get into the argument of hip hop, and where Chicago's kind of like the middle child, where we kind of lost in the battle because you have the East Coast and the West Coast. Chicago's always had with the melting pot, we had everything, and so our sound has always been a melting pot, so to speak. That you can always hear the different influences. You can hear the different influences wherever, no matter where if you went to a hip hop club up north, it might be a little bit more New York. Whereas you go on the west side, it might be a little bit more south or west coast. And then you had the places where it played everything, everything in between. And so Chicago definitely, our music is influenced from everything around us. And so that kind of separates us from being coastal, so to speak. But when I think about hip hop club in Chicago, I think about when Dim Day and they were doing like Alcatraz and stuff like that, or when Darrell Wicks was doing Lower Links. So at that point, like especially when it was developing in Chicago, like I said, I was working at Medusas, and then so it was definitely the redheaded stepchild, and there was there wasn't nobody really trying to hear hip hop until the '90s. No, but none of the club owners were trying to hear hip hop in the clubs into the '90s. So like I said, well, first of all, because it was black, or primarily black, urban. Definitely a different income demographic. It was like, once again, it was still a subculture. It wasn't as mainstream as it is now. So it was pockets. It wasn't like, you wasn't walking into Mariano's and hearing some hip hop. Like you had to go search it out. Right. We didn't have a radio. I mean, the radio stations didn't play hip hop. Mainstream. Yeah. You're talking mainstream, it wasn't accepted. I remember in like 89, 90 or something around that, I did a party where I had like deep house DJs downstairs and had Taco Bops upstairs, and people were just kind of like, what you doing? I'm like, and good music is good music. It shouldn't be separated, but we had already kind of been conditioned that way because it was hard enough for black people to actually find a space to be in. They definitely didn't want to be mixing in with the hip hop crowd, Right. So when you talk about early hip hop, I mean, like there wasn't, like I said, what Reg Knocking them did with Alcatraz and stuff like that. Darrell with Lower Links was one of the first open mics. Domingo Nearest, CPM, doing, there was, like other than, you had the Fresh Fest and stuff that came out and stuff like that, but that was still like, those were still stadiums. It wasn't like, wasn't a lot of small places really given a chance. Outside of maybe a Monday, Tuesday night, a completely off night, or a night that they got 5 people in the place, and they're like, well, it's not gonna hurt us.